Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Passion to Purpose. My name is Janet Duchesne. I'm founder of Thought Tree Lab and your host. I'll be interviewing financial services executives to hear about their career to date and their passions. Importantly, the passions such as physical movement and other active pursuits that reveal values driving us at work, helping us connect with something greater. It's about authenticity, communication, and telling stories that resonate. I'm beyond excited for today's guest. If capital markets were ultramarathons, they would embody him. Not only is Jim Goldie International Head of Capital Markets, ETFs, and Index Strategies at Invesco, he's also an ultramarathon runner. So let's set the scene. A sterling career outpaced only by shortening marathon times from just over 3 hours in 2021 down to sub 3 marathon times to date. He ran the London Marathon in 2 hours 47 and Seville Marathon a few weeks before that, also a sub 3. And he ran the Comrades Marathon in South Africa. So for those who don't know, the Comrades Marathon is essentially a double marathon. So that's 26 miles and another 26 miles and a few more miles, because why not? But Jim's why goes deeper. His race trajectory matches that of his career, rising through the ranks toward his influential leadership position announced this summer. It's no coincidence. Jim's passion outside of work shows up at work, bringing performance and purpose. Hi, Jim. Thanks so much for being on the show today. It's good to see you.
Hi, Janet. Thank you. It's good to be here, and I appreciate the kind words.
Wonderful. You're very welcome. And let's jump in, shall we? I thought we'd start with a bit of your career journey and foundation. You've had a stellar career at firms such as Vanguard and Goldman Sachs, and today you're leading capital markets at Invesco. I'm curious about your career progression alongside your running times. What do you see in that?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting career. Obviously, my career has been in ETFs, which haven't actually been around for that long. I think the first ETF in Europe was launched 25 years ago, and my almost 20-year career has been purely in ETFs. So it's been quite an interesting journey over the last 20 years. My running journey has been a little bit shorter than that, but also it's been pretty interesting few years. I only started running during COVID, but I'm quite a compulsive person, so I've kind of gone all in on running as well. But I think when you look at whether it's career trajectory or something like a marathon time, and you go look up from 20 years apart or 5 years apart when it comes to running, it's easy to think you see the progression and you think like it's a very linear thing. But it's actually like it's a journey like anything, like your career, your fitness journey. There's setbacks along the way. There's lots of ups. There's lots of downs. It's rarely a linear journey, and I think there's been a lot of consistency in how that progression has gone from a career perspective, but then also from a running perspective. Albeit running's just been a bit more condensed in terms of time frame. But I'm hoping. I'm in my 40s now, but I'm hoping there's still some upside left in both my career and my running journey as well when it comes to marathon and ultramarathon times.
Absolutely, yeah. Onwards and upwards. And those race time improvements happened at the same time when you were building your career, your expertise in ETFs as EMEA capital markets head. Was the timing coincidental, do you think, or was there something about that phase in your life that demanded both physical and professional discipline?
Yeah, discipline is something that I think has been a big part of my life from a professional and kind of fitness perspective. I think it is very important. There's a quote that I really like. I don't know where it stemmed from, but I heard it from an MMA fighter, and he says if you want a better life, you need to start with better habits, and that's something that I think is really important, and I think that's something that kind of always sticks in my head. And earlier in my career, I was always getting up really early, but I was going to the gym and doing weightlifting. I used to like following the strongman thing and doing a lot of weights in the gym. So that was where I found my routine and my habits and my discipline from an exercise perspective. Running was something that I really disliked, and I never did until COVID. And it was kind of thrust upon me when they closed the gyms down during COVID, and I wasn't able to get in and do kind of weight training. I thought I need to figure out something to kind of change during lockdown. But I was a bigger guy. I was 103 kilos, so I couldn't just start off going and running when I had no real endurance base. And I started off just building up by walking. Then I was able to run a 5K, then a 10K, and just kind of built up gradually. So the running part has something that has been part of my life for a few years, but sort of fitness and discipline and getting up early and exercise has always been part of it. And I think that is important from a professional perspective as well. Like I think you need a lot of discipline, you need to instill good habits, and you need to, or depending on what your career goals are, but having to think about how to keep improving and kind of showing ambition and kind of moving forward. But I think when nowadays you see that there's a lot more culture around health and
Yeah.
fitness and lifestyle, and I think it's easier to have like a strong kind of fitness hobby alongside your kind of professional world. Whereas when I started in my career in investment banking, there was a big culture of drinking and going out and spending a lot of time where you work hard in the office and then you go and you spend a lot of time in the pub after work, and that'd be a Thursday and a Friday and a Saturday. Nowadays, it feels like that culture's changed a lot, and I think running, which is a very much solo pursuit, but I think there's a kind of networking and team building element to that now, where you see like running clubs popping up
Mm,
for corporate firms, or if we have like a leadership offsite, there's a group of people that will go out and
mm,
they'll do a run
mm,
before the offsite session start in the morning.
mm.
So it is a good networking opportunity as well. So I think there is a lot of kind of where running and fitness can lean into how you kind of build your career as well. It's not just a very separate thing. I think there is some overlaps and some consistencies there for sure.
Absolutely. And I love the net running concept where you're networking with others and it's social endeavor and the discipline attached to that. It goes well with our industry really. And so we've talked a bit about what drew you to running initially. How do you think your running has evolved really in that time? So you've gotten faster, and your career has also accelerated. So the two seem linked.
Yeah, I mean, I think like from both, there is some consistencies as well. It's you learn, you adapt, you
Mm,
evolve, like whatever it is, whether it's or from a career perspective or a kind of fitness perspective. I haven't ever had a coach for running, so I've kind of just tried to learn as I go and improve as I go. And I think I've almost taken an hour off my marathon time since I did my first one now. And in a few years, I've done almost 40 marathons, including ultra marathons. And I still don't think I've run the perfect race yet. Like I've never run a negative split in a marathon where you run the second half quicker than the first half, which is generally seen as the most efficient way to run a marathon. So I'm still learning through that journey, and I'll adapt things. I read a lot, so I'll adapt my training plans or my nutrition plans or technology changes for things like the carbon plated race shoes and things like that. So everything kind of changes and evolves and adapts over time. And your career is no different. Like technology improves. I mean, when I started my career, we were sending a lot of trades using fax, and then kind of more recently, 5, 10 years ago, there was a lot of Excel-based analytics where you're running macros and all the rest of it. And if you look at what we're kind of doing nowadays, where a lot of firms use quants or coders, and you use coding language to run programs, which is a much more efficient way. And you think of going from sending faxes to trades, when you're running analysis using Python and other coding languages, using APIs and storing data in the cloud. Like that's quite a drastic
yeah,
change over a relatively short period of
yeah,
time. But as your career evolves, you need to be able to adapt to that if you want to improve, if you want to continue to progress. And running's no different. You need to continue to adapt and keep up with the times, and also just like train differently and try different things to see if it works. And not everything works all the time, and your career's no different. You may approach something in a different manner and it might not work out. So you go back to the drawing board and you try again. So I think there's definitely a lot of consistencies there from a running perspective as well as a career perspective in terms of how you adapt to it over time.
that's great. Yes, both evolving at the same time and needing
Yeah.
tweaks and adaptations as we go along. I'd like to talk a little bit about professional integration, so running and capital markets. Now, with your sub 3 marathons, while leading international capital market strategy, how does your running show up in your professional role?
Yeah, but I mean, first of all, I think that running for me is something that and exercise generally, whether it's running or weightlifting, I think it by getting up early in the morning, by doing training for an hour or two in the morning, I think that gives me
Mm,
energy. I feel much better having done
mm,
that, which I then kind of take into my work. Um, and for me, like exercise is a super important thing. And I think it's a super important thing for everyone. Like, is we all lead stressful lives and people have families and other responsibilities, but exercise is incredibly important when you look at your lifespan and also your health
so,
span, like just
mm,
your quality
mm,
of life as you get
mm,
older. So one of the things that I'm always keen to kind of instill and mention to the team is that if you may have kid responsibility during in the morning or in the evening, but have a lunch break and go and it doesn't have to be go for a run, like go do a yoga class, go a walk,
yeah,
just try and find some sort of balance where you can use exercise to kind of help improve your kind of quality of life. And I think it is very important. And if you have that, for me, exercise is something that's always been a positive thing and it gives me energy that take that into my work. And I think my professional side of things benefits from that. Then my problem is because I am quite a compulsive person, I'm very much that all or nothing person, trying to strike the balance with being able to kind of keep my fitness going and give everything to my professional world, but then still have a family life and things like that. It's difficult to strike that balance, especially when now I'm kind of mixing it up and I'm trying like high volume training to see how that
uh,
helps in my marathon.
yeah,
So I'm running up to 200 kilometers a week, which means that I'm having to do 30 kilometers a day and do 20 in the morning, 10 in the afternoon or the evening every day. It's a lot to kind of fit in amongst a role which I have, which is international in nature, which covers from APAC, the EMEA, Canada. Like there is a lot going on for a lot of the day, so you kind of have to be able to juggle that. So striking that balance personally is something that I'm trying to juggle with currently. But I think that if you do have that balance and you can do it in a healthy manner and you can include exercise as an important part of your day, I always think that will like reflect well in terms of how you set yourself up from a professional perspective and will always be kind of beneficial in the long run because you'll feel better in yourself, you'll have more energy and you can bring that to your work.
absolutely, absolutely. Always feel better for doing a bit of exercise before the working day starts. If we could go a little bit more granular, particularly the ETF industry, and we look at that and it's experiencing massive growth and innovation. When you're out on a long run, processing the challenges your clients face in the industry with growth and also some of the operational challenges like the move to shorter settlement cycles in Europe, UK, and of course other regions in time. What sort of insights emerge that you might not access while sitting at your desk at work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange thing because I try when I'm out and running, like I'll have some music on and then I kind of just drift away. But there's definitely been like many periods where there is something that's going on from a work perspective. Something like T+1 has been very topical at the minute because I've been co-chairing the asset management work stream for the EU's T1 governance committee. So that's the kind of steer co that's been set up by ESMA and the European Commission and the European Central Bank to propose how the industry should evolve to a world of T+1, which is now going to be proposed for September 2027. So there's been a lot of kind of working with the industry to get the views from the ETF industry and feed that into the work stream, which is then being proposed, or we proposed it to the regulators in Brussels a couple of months ago. So there was a lot to think about and walk through in a very short period of time. And a lot of the time when I was out running, something would pop into my head and I would just stop and take notes on my phone so I didn't forget it. And it's weird how things just kind of come out of nowhere. And it doesn't have to be something like T+1, but it could just be other random projects, how we manage day-to-day trading activities or analytics or something that we could do with a client that we're not doing or something that we could tweak. Just little things that just kind of pop into your head randomly. And I think running gives you the space to do that, where if you're out there and you're not trying to kill yourself every day, and that was something that in my early days I thought you had to run every run as quick as you
Mm.
could. And it was all about what time was going to pop up on Strava or whatever. But now I'm realizing a lot, like you need to do a lot of very easy running to let your body recover and absorb the training and all the rest of it. So when you're out there running what it's relative, but what's very a comfortable pace, then you can like kind of daydream a little bit and think a little bit, and sometimes ideas will pop into your head, and yeah, I just stop. I'll take a note on my phone, and then I'll kind of relay it to the team when I get back and we're in the office or whatever, and see if it's something that could be worked or could be implemented. So it's I actually do it quite a lot, and it's weird how often something random will just kind of pop into your head, and you think, oh, that's worth exploring a little bit.
Yeah.
They're not all gems, but sometimes things have popped up which we've been able to implement or utilize, and yeah, I think it's so it's just useful having that
Yeah.
headspace where you've got nothing really going on and you can just drift away to wherever you want to go. And for me, a lot of the time, it does kind of lead to kind of thinking about work and things like that, where but I'm not kind of out there purposely thinking about my day job every day when I'm out running. Just things will just pop up now and again, and I'll always just stop and take notes.
Absolutely. I'm also a believer of getting out there and the space that creates to give you that clarity and stepping back from the day-to-day situation and into spaciousness when you're out there running in nature. It's just differentiating between the day job and being out there. It will just give you those insights. I think they just come more naturally, which is
Yeah.
great. Excellent.
And it's also hard to find that with other forms of exercise because when you're like weightlifting, for example, you're doing something really intense for a very short period of time, and
Yeah.
then you're trying to like let your body recover, and then you go and do another set, and it's everything's going to change in, and you're moving around the gym, you're getting different weights, and you're getting stuff set up. Whereas when you're kind of going along an easy run, I'm fortunate enough living in London, I'm close to the River
Mm.
Thames. I can go out for a couple of hours, just run along the Thames, and I've got nothing else to concentrate on, so I can just drift away and let stuff kind of pop into my head. Whereas it's hard to do that with any other forms of exercise that you may need to take, like, or you need to be more coordinated, or you're thinking about things, or you're engaging in other things. Whereas I think running is pretty unique in that regard, that just gives you that kind of headspace to drift off and think about whatever you want to think of or work through whatever problems that you want to work through because it doesn't have to be professional. Like everyone else has got stuff going on in their lives, and having running just gives you a little bit of alone time to kind of process whatever you need to process, which I think is really good and kind of really healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. A nice long run will, yeah, definitely helps, I find. So I'd like to touch now on your industry vision and some of the changes that we're seeing. Because given your unique perspective, what do you think are one of the two things that in the industry that you'd like to change about how our industry approaches ETF trading and market structure?
Yeah, I mean, I think the where we've gone over the last 20 years has been quite phenomenal to kind of see that journey. It's going to be really interesting to see where we end up in the next 20 years. The growth of ETFs has been quite phenomenal as well, and it doesn't seem like it's going to kind of go away anytime soon. So I think for in terms of market structure, things like T+1 settlement are a big thing that gets us back in line with the US. I think for European capital markets, which tend to be more fragmented in nature, whereas where we can look at ways of harmonizing and creating more transparency, whether that be through regulation or things like the consolidated tape, that if we have that in Europe, can add more transparency and just get more people comfortable with ETF market structure and ETF trading, or things like interoperability from a clearing perspective, which would create synergies and efficiencies from the settlement and downstream side of things. So I think there are different elements of market structure that we've been working on and talking about for 10, 20 years already. But if we can make improvements there, that'll just help get the investor base more comfortable with trading European or UCITS ETFs. But then I think from the industry's perspective itself, a lot of it's going to be driven around technology, and that can manifest itself in different ways. Where it could be like I mentioned, we've gone from taking orders via fax to having quants and
Mm,
coding build and coders build like platforms for us to be able to run analytics. I think is we look at how do we scale up our business. A lot of it is around you need technology, you need to evolve what you're doing, you need to improve what you're doing, and you need to continually look at where you can create efficiencies to double the size of the industry in the next 5 or 10 years. Because there are elements that we've created a lot of scalability with, but there are other elements that if we want to continue this sort of growth trajectory, we need to get better at that the scalability side as well.
mm,
And then as well from a technology perspective, it's not just like the operational or trading side. You've got the product
mm,
side as well, where
mm.
we're seeing how the ETF products have evolved over time, where few years back, we had the big move of like ESG products, and then there was a big wave of thematic products, and now active ETFs are becoming more and more popular in the US and in Europe. And I think that'll be another kind of big growth phase as well. At Invesco, we just launched our first AAA CLO ETFs this year as well. So crossing over with the public and private markets parts of the
Yeah,
firms, again, is something that I think we'll see a lot of in the future. So I think there's huge uh, potential for continued growth. And I think if we continue to do our bit in terms of how do we help that evolve through harmonization, transparency, and then like from a evolution from a technological perspective, I think they're going to be the two or three main points for how do we double the AUM of the industry in the next 5 or 10 years.
fantastic, fantastic. That's great. And it's like running, where obviously in terms of growth would be shortening the timings and the race times, but also utilizing some of that technology that we're seeing evolve in trainers or garments and so forth, and even
Yeah,
clothing. So that's it's all good. Yeah, good. So there's
I
some,
mean, if you look at like the growth in marathons as
mm,
well, like that has been crazy over like the last few years. I
yeah.
think London this year broke the record the for next year's marathon in 2026. I think they had 1.1 million
Wow.
people apply for 18,000
Wow.
spots in the marathon. And it's just
Yeah.
crazy how popular it's getting because it's become so much more accessible now. And then it does become a much more of a social thing as well. You have platforms like Strava and
Yeah.
all the running clubs, which I think is a big thing in the UK where you create that community feel as well. And yeah, then people can I'm a big detail person and I love the data, so having my Garmin and be able to track all my stats, which we couldn't do before, I think was great. And
Yeah.
then, like you mentioned, I think the running shoe technology with the carbon plated shoes,
Yeah.
like that is definitely leading to a lot of people being able to run quicker marathon times. And it's been interesting just how much the running industry from a technology perspective has evolved in recent
Mm.
years. And then you see that as translates to a huge growth in people that want to do it and take up the sport. So there are definitely a lot of similarities there, but it's great. And then hopefully, from a running perspective, you'll continue to see that evolve, and you'll continue to see more people get interested. And I think the problem from a running perspective is that capacity isn't infinite. Like
Mm.
there is only so many people you can have running through a city on a given day at a given time. So how like the marathons, especially the big major
Mm.
marathons, how they adapt to that, I think will be interesting to see because it feels like every year is just a record year, like the ETF industry. Every year is a record year in terms of
Yes.
growth. But from a running perspective with the marathons, that's something that I think will be a bit more difficult for them to manage over
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. Yes. Interesting. Interesting. As you say, growth in the number of runners, also capacity. How do the organisers manage that over time? Will be an interesting one to watch. So, from the changes that you described on ETFs, who do you think would benefit most from that, and why is it personally important to you?
From an ETF perspective, I think the changes are really, I mean, the industry benefits overall, but I think the investors and the users of ETFs are the ones that stand to benefit. I think if we can make our products, well, from a product perspective, if you have broader offering of products, then that would appeal to more people that might like different investment themes that they might not currently have access to. But I think as technology evolves, it's from a retail perspective as well. I think the US is a lot further ahead than Europe. In Europe, we're seeing a lot of evolution from retail users of ETFs, and a lot of that's coming from digital platforms, where we're seeing a lot of growth in Germany, for example. it's one area where I think the UK is lacking, and I think the government and the FCA are aware of it, and they're trying to look at how can we change, and how can we change not just from an ETF perspective, but from an investment perspective. How do we get more people in the UK investing rather than saving, and getting their money, putting their money to work and thinking longer term like they do in the US. But from an ETF perspective, the challenge in the UK is really the platform space where the technology isn't as good from an ETF perspective, which means that investors' ability to access it isn't as good as what they could get in the US, or where they're buying traditional mutual funds. A lot of the platforms you can subscribe to a mutual fund for free, but when you're trading an ETF, there's a cost to that transaction, which could be anything from like £3 or £4 up to £10. But if you only want to trade in £100 a month or whatever, or £200, that £10 to transact in that ETF is very prohibitive from a cost perspective. If you could just go and subscribe to a similar mutual fund without having to pay that transaction cost. So things like that we need to evolve to allow the investors to benefit from the scale that we want to create in the industry. And I think that's kind of part of the next step of the evolution that the industry is looking at, is how do we make ETFs more accessible? And a lot of that is driven by having more products available to more people, and then also having the ability to satisfy that retail demand like we see in other regions, particularly here in the UK, where I think we're lagging behind a little bit. So there's a lot of work going into that. It's not going to be an overnight fix, but hopefully as we kind of look out the next few years, we'll see a lot of change and a lot of evolution there, where a lot of these digital platforms can come in and really try and revolutionize the space, which could hopefully like spearhead the next phase of growth.
Yes, and it's a bit like running, where you need to create that capacity and availability for that growth, for new entrants, for new runners to come in and use the benefits, and prompt towards growing the running industry, and people who are more into it now than say they were 10 years ago. So,
Yeah,
similar analogies.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think like the if and yeah, and again, if we compare like what I mentioned, like the
Mm.
platforms and how they need to evolve, and I think from a running perspective, you're already seeing that growth with things like the Runner app, where you have these, or even your Garmin app can do it now, and Strava they just bought Runner, so you have these apps where they can do like coaching for people, and the Couch to
Yeah.
5K is another very good example, that things that can just help people, that encourage them to get moving and get started. And it's the same with ETF trading. If you're unfamiliar with ETFs, or you don't know how to trade them or how to access them, once if you just get a little bit of encouragement and you get started and you realize it's not this big scary thing, and that's whether it be running a 5K or a marathon or trading an ETF. If once you get confident in your ability to do that thing, it becomes a lot easier. So you are seeing that in the running space, because you've got all these apps and you've got a lot of technology, and even these YouTube channels that you can look to get information, and kind of build that confidence in your ability to go out and do it. Because I think a lot of people, when you just think of going running a marathon, which could take, yeah, some people do it less than 3 hours, but a lot of people 4, 5, 6 hours. It's a very daunting thing. But if you kind of break it down and you have a good training plan and you can follow it, and you can pivot and adapt to fit around your life, then it is a very achievable thing for a lot of people. And I think that's what's attracting a lot of people to give it a go now.
Absolutely, it's that information availability now that people are taken
Yeah,
through the journey, and step by step, like ETFs, where you have that ecosystem of knowing who who the various who the various participants are, or the, let's say, running guides are in the market, that you can partner
yeah.
with to make your journey, kind of growth enabled and beneficial to you, whether it be an investor or an issuer, for example. So it's good evolution.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. And so the last section I'd like to touch on, Jim, is values and your alignment. So particularly the values that running creates. It reveals a lot about someone's character. It's discipline, as we talked about, resilience, but also the ability to push through any discomfort or challenges. So how do these values that running has unearthed in you, align with Invesco's approach to client service and market leadership?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very similar, to be honest, and at least like what I try and kind of bring to both. I think that yeah, you mentioned a lot of them, like as I said at the start, that for me, like a lot of it is built around good habits. And you talk about like people that if you try and rely on willpower or motivation, that's something that's very finite and takes effort. Whereas what you really want to do is just get into good habits. And habits are habits. They're whether they're bad habits or good habits. If you can try and start breaking bad habits and instilling good habits, then you're setting yourself up for success, whether it be from a health perspective, personal or a professional perspective. And I think that's something that I always try and do. And like I'm not perfect when it comes to fitness, nutrition, my professional life, and it's all about trying where you can make little changes, not big drastic changes overnight because that rarely sticks, but just making little changes where you can instill those good habits. And one of the kind of things that people always talk about with running is you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that phrase is great and it's really good for your professional kind of growth and trajectory as well, because it's things like taking on the project that you might not want to take on, or going and speaking at that conference that you might not want to speak at. And these are things that when I started, and I still don't like public speaking, I don't like seeing myself on a camera, but these are things that you realize that the more you do them, the easier they become. But by doing them, you help build your own profile and build your own brand, and you help promote your company alongside it. And I think it's by doing the things that make you uncomfortable, that's where you can find the bulk of success. And that's really been a big part for me, like from very early in my career when I was even when I started uni, I left after a couple of weeks because part of the degree was you had to present in front of the tutorial every fortnight, and I was really nervous. I had a lot of anxiety about speaking in front of people, so I actually left uni and then went to become like a chef full time. And then through going working as a chef when you're doing 70-hour weeks and you're going to catering school on your day off and you're working on Christmas Day and all the rest of it, I did that for a few years and you realize that it's a very hard way to make a living. And I did enjoy schoolwork and I did enjoy finance, so I kind of built up the courage to go back to uni and got a finance degree and then managed to get a job at Morgan Stanley and moved down to London. And I was the only one in my family that's gone to uni. I'm the only one in my family that's kind of left Scotland and left the town that we grew up in. And a lot of that is there was a lot of uncomfortable, a lot of that makes you uncomfortable. But for me, that was a part of achieving what I wanted to achieve and kind of where my career started. And I've sort of always continued that through where I might not want to take on a project or do that speaking slot or have that kind of difficult meeting with someone in the team, whether it be like someone that you work with or someone in senior leadership position. But it's by taking those opportunities to take yourself out your comfort zone where I think you find a lot of growth
Mm,
and you find a lot of success as well.
mm,
And it's the same with running. Like the only way you can improve at running is if you're uncomfortable pretty much all the time that you're doing it.
mm.
When people see like your progression in running, you think, oh, like that's great. Like you could running's easy for you. It's definitely not. Like you just get better
Yeah,
at it, but it's always as hard as it's ever been. You just get faster. You're still uncomfortable all the
yeah.
time. Like marathons are very uncomfortable things, but that's the way you progress and that's how you achieve. And I think that's one of the most important things is the discipline, the good habits, and then just being comfortable being uncomfortable is the single biggest thing I think that translates from a running or any sort of fitness aspect as well as a professional one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that answer, and particularly what you said about taking those steps. And in running's case, it's strides. It doesn't have to be massive sprints, but it's striding, but keep going and realize, yes, it gets uncomfortable, but you'll get there in the end, and it's not always going to be like that. So
Yeah,
you can enjoy it. It's similar to our markets, capital markets, where it's taking those steps, getting familiar with something or type of investing or type of approach in the industry when a lot of there's a lot of competition. It's very dynamic, like running, and so you take the
yeah,
steps to to evolve and to evolve as the industry does, given all the kind of extraneous changes that are happening at the same time.
yeah. And you just need to put yourself out there as well. Like that's by going and attending conferences and doing these meetings and getting on with your kind of peers in your industry. That's how you learn and that's how you grow. You need to kind of put that effort into building your network. The stuff's not going to just fall on your lap. And when you want to progress in anything, you do need to put yourself out there and you need to put the effort into it. And I think that's an important topic because just being able to do your day job well or really well is rarely enough if you want to continue to progress your career and take on more responsibilities and expand your remit and things like that. You really need to look at what are others doing or look at your peers and people that you admire or have that kind of mentor relationship with and just create a dialogue and create a network and just try and think of ways that you can improve as a person and as a from a professional perspective as well. So I think it's key that you kind of do need to put yourself out there in that regard and kind of network with people and create like those kind of relationships. Because from an ETF perspective, it's a very big industry. It's a very large growing industry, but it is a very small community as well. There's still people that have been working in the industry for 20 years. They're still here. Like it's there's a small number of people that have been around for a very long time, and it is a small community. So like the more that you can integrate yourself in that community, I think is going to be beneficial for you from a career trajectory perspective as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's great, and I've certainly learned a lot from you today on this podcast. In particular, gearing up for my sub 25 minute park run, and it's yes.
Nice. Good
Thank
luck
you
with
very
that.
much. I'll take a leaf out your book definitely for that. So thank you for that. One final question, if that's okay. If we look at what drives you at work, and how your personal values show up in your leadership and your decision making. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of what motivates you, I love what I do. I love my job and I love my running. I think you have to love the thing if you want to put in the hours, put in the work, be comfortable being uncomfortable, all those things that we've been speaking about. I think you have to really enjoy what you do. Otherwise, if you're putting in that amount of effort and you want to continue to progress and you want to continue to grow, it's very difficult to do if you don't enjoy it. And that's in any pursuit, whether it's running or professional, weightlifting, whatever. And I think that for me, I really enjoy what I do, which makes it a lot easier. And that's in both. But I think that it's important to, even if you enjoy something, it's easy to make it unenjoyable. And you have to find that balance and find a way that works for you because like marathon training is a good example of it, where I'm trying really high volume training at the minute. That takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of time, it carries a lot of fatigue. It's something that I after I've gone through this block and run the Berlin Marathon in a few weeks, I need to understand like, did that work for me? And is this something that I think could be sustainable? Because it is something that's very difficult, even though I love running and I love the pursuit of running a faster marathon. Can I continue to run 180, 200 kilometer weeks and be realistic, like that be a part of my life alongside a career that I'm also trying to continue to progress with? Because what you don't want to get to is the point where you're trying to improve so much in whatever it is, your career or your fitness journey, that you then start to not enjoy it and you lose that love, and that's where things go wrong. So I think by finding something that you love and that you enjoy is great, but then you have to kind of find that balance as well. And I think that's where that is a continued journey. That people just always have to find for themselves, and what works for some person might not always work for someone else. And I think that's only through like you continue to evolve and adapt that you find that balance. And I think that's very key, and it's something that I always talk about with the team. It's something that I think I could do a lot better with it is trying to strike that balance. But I always try and encourage the people in the team that you don't have to be first person on the desk every day and the last person to leave. Like you can take a lunch break every day. That's not going to be kind of frowned upon. Like if you need to come in late on a given day or leave early on a given day, like we're all adults at the end of the day. We're all humans at the end of the day. People have other things going on outside of their job. And I'm a big believer in having the flexibility to work in a team environment that also you kind of breed trust. I think trust and respect is a very big thing in the workplace where I think if you want to be part of a really successful team, you need both of those things and you need it from everyone, which is difficult. You can't really have an environment where certain people don't get on with one another or they don't want to work with one another or they don't trust one another because that's never going to allow the team to grow and progress the way that it could or it should. But I think if you can breed the culture where you have this trusting environment and people know that everyone's got everyone's back within the team and you can work with one another and make sure that you've got flexibility where you need it, but everyone works hard towards a common goal. I think having that trust in that respect is like this a really key thing. And to be honest, that's not just from a professional perspective. I believe that outside of the office as well. Like trust and respect are very big kind of important values for your kind of family life or just day to day, and like just walking around and interacting with strangers. I think having being respectful and things like that are super important. So there are definitely some values that I think are very necessary from any sort of fitness journey, but they're also very key from a work perspective, both for you as an individual, but then as part of a team environment as well.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience, your passion for performance, both on the road and in the market, has really shone through. And grateful for your insights, and it goes far beyond the numbers. So it's been a pleasure having you on Passion to Purpose, and good luck for the Berlin Marathon. And I
Thank you
look
very
forward
much.
to seeing you on the road for a run at some point.
Appreciate it. Yeah, looking forward to it. And yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.